Namaskar, I'm Aarti Rubin, Director for Programs at Mind Forward Alliance India. We welcome our viewers to Mind Forward Alliance's Global Summit. Today's panel discussion will look at the current surge in need for mental health practices in the workplace in India and the priorities that need to be addressed. On an average, a human collectively spends in hours anywhere between 45 to 50 years of his life at the workplace. COVID caught us off guard, changed our dynamics, and asked us to adapt overnight. The scale of mental health disorders in India accounts for nearly 15% of the global mental health burden. For those of you tuning in for the first time, launched in the UK in 2012, the Mind Forward Alliance, earlier known as the City Mental Health Alliance, is a collaborative alliance of businesses working together to develop healthy and thriving corporate cultures that keenly focus on workplace mental health. Our first panelist, Mellener and Coelho, is Vice President and Head Diversity, Equity and Inclusion at Northern Trust, and the Advisory Board member of the Future Talent Council. Mellener is an inclusion strategist with a focus on creating cultures where people can bring their passion and whole self to work. Welcome, Mellener. Our second panelist is Sunita Wazir, Global Wellbeing Lead at Unilever. Sunita Wazir is a Mumbai-based human resource and leadership development professional with 26 years of industry experience. She is deeply passionate about enabling mental health, building psychological safety and landing ED and I initiatives, and is especially committed to building equitable workspaces for women, the LGBTQI plus community, and persons with disabilities. Welcome, Sunita. A third panelist, Swayta Murarka, Senior Director, Global Banking Head at the GBM centers in Bangalore, Guangzhou, Manila, and Colombo. Swayta is passionate about equal opportunity and founded the first international branch of the Diversity Network Balance in HSBC. She helped expand this network for over 43 countries and 50,000 employees, and is also propagating initiatives that facilitate mental health awareness. I welcome the three of you to today's panel discussion. We'll get on with the panel discussion. I will propose my first question to each of you if you're ready. So we start off with Mellener, Sunita, and Swayta. We'll go in that order. Yeah. So each of you have been passionate in working with the mental health domain within your workspace. So I'd like to know what, according to you, are the highlights of your involvement so far? And what do you think needs immediate attention, like on priority? Mellener?
Thanks, Aarti. I think that's a great question. So for those of you who don't know me, and Aarti, thank you for that kind introduction. Mental health and well-being is something I'm truly passionate about. I myself live with a mental health condition, and the journey has been one of really a progressive realization. So for me, I think the highlights would be introducing this at Northern Trust in India and cascading this across the Asia Pacific region. It's the whole piece of awareness and dealing with the language around mental health. Especially in a country like India, where we have gendered stereotypes where boys are taught not to cry and are supposed to be tough, and those stereotypes get carried on later in life. People sometimes have difficulties expressing their emotions. And just like we take care of our physical health, I think it's also important to take care of our mental health. So awareness was the first step. And just sharing my example of what we've done at Northern Trust, we introduced awareness and conversations around mental health in a fun and engaging manner, using a storyboard campaign called Sky is the Limit, which was created and designed for us by Mitra Trust. So really, Sky talks about, Sky is this imaginary character who meets with four other characters, a penguin, an owl, a dog, and a sloth bear, talks about different aspects of mental health like stress, anxiety, depression, and overall mental health. Talking about things like what is it, what are the causes, how it plays out, and how you can address this. And if we look at our population and the demographics, most of our staff are the Gen Z and Gen Y. So we found this campaign not just relatable to them, but some of our seniors as well. So, Sky and Piers from the Office Park became soon very, very popular. People could relate to them. I had staff coming and telling me, oh, today I feel like Owly, today I feel like Slothy. And there was a certain sense of endurance with these characters. The second highlight would be the power of storytelling, right? Storytelling takes its shape in many different forms. All of us have our stories, some positive, not so positive. So when we partnered with community business to bring the This Is Me storytelling campaign to this part of the world, initially we didn't have any stories. So we had two of our senior leaders and myself share our stories of living with a mental health condition. And then people started opening up. We created a site on our intranet where people could share stories. And we've got feedback saying, sharing the stories was something very cathartic. People enjoyed reading them. It's one of our most popular campaigns today. So the awareness, the storytelling, and I think the third highlight would be is in terms of equipping some of our managers and leaders with skills to signpost if someone is experiencing a mental health condition. So I think where the challenge still lies ahead is getting people to talk about it. There's still a lot of stigma. People don't feel comfortable talking about their mental health. And especially in a country like India, where mental illness is considered one of the disabilities under the Rights of Persons with Disability Act, the stigma gets further alleviated. So, one is the stigma and the lack of support. So, if you look at India as a geography, as a country, and we do a comparison with the number of people experiencing mental health conditions and the number of available qualified skilled mental health professions, there is certainly a gap. So I think it's the onus of corporates to come forward and address this gap, not just for employees in the workplace, but what can we do for the wider community. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Melina. Sunita, would you want to add on?
Yes, for sure. Thanks, Melena, for kicking us off. And thanks, Arti, for a lovely introduction for all of us. So let me start by saying, while I've spent almost the last decade working in mental health, I think one of the things we all have to acknowledge is we just don't know enough about mental health. None of us. We just, you know, uh, society fails people with mental health, issues, disorders, whatever you call it. And to a large extent, that is being corrected right now. But I would like to talk a little bit more about what we can do as workplaces. While there is inequity, while there is stigma, while there is bias, yes, there's a lot of all of that. And everything that Melena said rings true. But at workplaces, what environments are we offering people? And that's, I think, a question we need to ask ourselves as progressive workplaces that want to invite the right talent, that need superlative performance to keep going in these rough times post COVID, post pandemic. For me, some of the highlights in this decade have really been how the conversation has changed. So, more along the lines of what Melina was saying about storytelling. Storytelling is critical, and we put a lot of onus on leaders. But I think sharing our vulnerability and talking openly about mental health is a responsibility each of us have, because mental health is not something that happens to someone else. The statistics that you're talking about, the numbers going up, everyone has mental health. We need to acknowledge that mental health is on a spectrum. It goes from good to declining to poor to mental, ill health, and then it can also become these mental health disorders. When we have enough awareness, which we don't, we know so much about physical health and we're so comfortable speaking about it. But when we reach a point in our careers where we interact with people and we realize that there is a mask or there is a garb that people are putting on. For me, the highlight has been this transformation at the workplace that I've seen, where people have now taken that mask off. They've started speaking up openly, they're sharing their vulnerabilities. It's not just leaders, it's everyone. People feel far more empowered. And that's, I think, one of the biggest highlights, that we're moving away from this very stigmatized space. Yes, there is still stigma. Yes, it's there within families. Yes, it's there within education. Yes, it's there in our media. Look at the way films portray people with mental health disorders. It's
Mhm.
always a very dark, grim picture. Even the visuals are so dark. That's not reality. Reality is that people with mental health illnesses as well, mental ill health, are living full lives. With the right treatment, 90% of cases with depression can actually, with the right support and medication and treatment, have healthy, fulfilling careers. So at workplaces, one, building a workplace where you can speak up, that's important. That means psychological safety, that means openness, that means sharing vulnerability. Two, offering the right support, anytime, anywhere support. That has been another big highlight for us. We offer 24/7, 365 unquestioning support, support through experts through our employee assistance program, but also support through peer communities. And I'd love to share a little more about that when we come to that segment. But that's just it. When you can build the power of educating people with the right language, they can have the right conversations on mental health. So that's the second one. And the third one for me is, besides the support and besides the systems and all of that, offering what I think is the right signals. What are the signals we give to people when they declare their mental health related issues? For a lot of us, uh, it's about that not being able to walk the talk. A lot of people are very well meaning, but then when it comes down to it, do we promote people that state that they are on mental health, treatment? Do we feel comfortable assigning them key roles? Do we hesitate in putting challenging stuff forward to them? Now, I've also worked for a number of years on disability, and that's a passion area for me. That's something that I think some things, light a spark in you, and working for a program for people with disabilities is something that gives me a lot of sense of purpose and joy. And what I've realized is, while many of these barriers are breaking, it's one person at a time, one leader at a time, one line manager at a time. And that's what I think we need to keep doing. So that's what's ahead. But the highlights are, we're talking about it. We have popular, characters, actors speaking about mental health. We've got millennials, Gen Z, they're showing us a mirror, they're speaking about mental health. There's lots more help available. When I started working in this space, I had to really hunt. I had to take a magnifying glass and look for providers of service. I had to look for psychologists. I had to really, really find the right providers and partnerships. Today, those are freely available. So we're on the right journey, the right track. But as workplaces, it's the culture, the soft stuff, which is the hard stuff that we need to crack. And that's what I think we need to work on more. Let me hand
Yeah.
over to Sweta. Yeah, back to you.
So Shweta, who is a business leader with HSBC, has a different perspective to approaching mental health by means of personal experience. Shweta, if you would like to share some insights about the same.
I was getting goosebumps actually when my co-panelists were sharing all their experiences with mental health, and some of the points that they made was so pertinent, and I could clearly recall how I lived through some of those things that they did mention. For instance, Sunita was mentioning how it is important to create that kind of safe space for people to speak up. So my foray into mental health was through a story, or an experience that I had with one of my directs, where he had come up to me a couple of years back, about 4 to 5 years back, to talk about his personal mental health situation. So in the first place, when I heard about his situation, I would say that I was a bit lost myself as to how to approach this whole thing. I felt that I was not prepared in the first place, or I did not have the right help or guides to see him through. But I think through the right assistance provided by HSBC, and through putting my best empathetic self at play, I was able to help him sort of get over that situation. So what I saw is, not only did he come out of that situation just managing to survive, but also when he came out of that situation, he was at a place where he was thriving. So which gave me confidence, and also made me realize how imperative this whole managing the well-being for your employees is. It's such an imperative to your whole business case. So it's not only a good to have thing. I realized that it is a must have, a must do for every leader. Prior to that, I would be honest that I would look at it as one of the things I need to do. And I mean, I would say that, like in some of the organizations, or with some of the initiatives, I still feel that they could go a bit beyond tick box exercise. I would say that, there was a scope for us to embed that more into the mainstream. And through this experience, I thought that I could like really live the experience and understand what meaning it has for my business. Also, I did see how this individual like really created a cascading positive impact. So not only the help that and assistance that he got from an organizational perspective perhaps helped him at the organization level, he was overall more happy, and it would have certainly helped his personal and family life. But he also decided to pay it forward. So he decided to become a mental health ambassador. And because he was so vocal about his story and the help he received from the organization, we had so many more people at HSBC come up with their stories, felt that it's a safe place for them to talk about. So I think in this whole situation, like I said, as a leader, one, I came very close and personal to this situation, and I became very, very passionate about this whole situation. That's when I reached out to the India CEO, Surendra Rosha at that time, who was a very strong sponsor himself of mental health. And we reached out to the Global City Mental Health Alliance that was operating in a couple of countries, and HSBC was already one of the very key members there. So the global networks was introduced to me by one of my um, mentors, and I would say that at that time I felt that I was lucky to be able to be working in a multinational organization where we were already very progressed in some of the other countries with health, with respect to mental health conversations. And I felt the need to do more in India. So that's when, we started this conversation with Poppy and others, and a lot of other great organizations that we have on the call today, and a few others joined as well. So we got this alliance together. But I think in driving this whole thing, the gap I felt which needs immediate attention from a country perspective is definitely the social fabric needs to change when it comes to mental health conversations. Because I'm sure if I had not had the right mentors, or if where I was not in the right organization where I knew that, some of these initiatives are already running globally and we have the right help and guides there, I would have been at a loss. So I think we really need to do more from a country perspective, more wider, starting with corporates and starting with multinationals, but also we need to spread it wider and change the social fabric. So that is one of the immediate gaps that I see we need to address, because only if we create that kind of safe space for people to talk, and we make them feel okay for them to come up and speak about this situation, is when we will be able to help and support them. If they decide not to open up in the first place, then perhaps as managers, it would be even more difficult for us to recognize that there might be something wrong with any of the team members.
Thank you, Swayta. Thank you, all of you, for your insight. It's very evident that, like how we say with physical health or physiological health, early intervention is the key to be able to cure yourself, or at least set yourself on a path of better health. Same goes with mental health as well. Like as Sunita pointed out, early intervention is something that we need to be able to root for, and that comes with being able to create an aware environment, and perhaps through that awareness be able to build activities that are human, that have that human touch of storytelling and fun, so that in due time vulnerability is also felt, and people are able to reach out to one another through their stories, right? So there is no stepping away from the focus of stigma, but we are not denying the work that needs to be done with destigmatizing either in the concept of mental health. I see how much each of you have done to deliver unique programs at your workplace, and what you do to share it with our audience today. Which also takes me to my next question, which is through the years of work in progress, each of you have led curated initiatives for your own organizations, right? Were there moments when you felt that certain initiatives created limited or no impact? In other words, if I could say, are we just ticking off boxes of duties or liabilities as an employer, rather than driving home campaigns that have reach, have impact, and have purpose? Yeah. If we could start off with Mellener again, follow the same routine. Flo?
Sure. I think while I won't say there's any one particular campaign that has failed, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to undermine the role of an employee assistance program. I see a lot of companies talking too much about their employee assistance program. So when you ask companies, what are you doing to support your employees with mental health? Oh, we have an EAP. It's great that you have an employee assistance program, but remember, not everyone is comfortable talking about this topic openly within their own families, right? There's also, and I would allude to what Sunita and Swayta said about creating a psychologically safe space, right? So if they don't feel psychologically safe, why would they go and talk to somebody, to someone supported by their organization? And very often they question the anonymity of or the confidentiality of these discussions. So while all of our employee assistance programs and the support we give our employees are confidential, there's always that element of doubt. So my what I would like to share is have an employee assistance program, but it's just one of the many tools and resources you can offer your employees. So that's one. And the second thing is, and this is something I've heard from my peers working in this space. If you want to introduce a mental health program, please don't start with a workshop on depression, because people associate mental health with depression. Depression is a mental health condition. It could become a mental illness, but mental health is more about mental health conditions and mental illness. And Sunita on the panel spoke about the continuum and the spectrum. Talk about mental health just as you would talk about your physical health. So that's the other second learning. So the first one being on just not banking on the EAP, and the second one is look at the wide spectrum of mental health. Just don't focus on the not so positive. There are many other positive aspects, right? We talk about meditation, yoga, mindfulness, gratitude, kindness, compassion. Focus on those, because all of those, and it's been proved by neuroscience, have an impact on our mental health. So focus on the positive. And I'm going to hand over to Sunita as well. Sunita, thank you.
Thanks, Melena. And I'm going to add a pet peeve to what Melena talked about. So there is obviously, she's saying, you can't just switch on an EAP and expect people to adopt it, right? That's not how all of us landed our employee assistance program, because you can't, it's like, outsourcing your baby completely to someone else to take care of it. That's not going to happen, right? You still need to nurture that. So equally, as far as the EAP is concerned, and I didn't mean any offense by that. What I simply meant is you can't just expect a third party provider to solve all your possible requirements for all of your people. So the peeve I want to add to this is also a lot of organizations during COVID particularly reached out for support and said, I'm offering so many things. I'm offering weekly yoga classes. I'm offering Zumba. I'm offering, that's just it. If you go to transactional stuff, that's what you'll get out of it. That's engagement, that's connecting to people, that's creating fun or creating ways for them to sort of have an outlet, which was great. We needed that for some time in the pandemic. But I think what we need to do is also have a transformational agenda. So you need to have a plan, and then you need to work to that plan as far as mental health is concerned. When you do something transactional, you're giving somebody a respite or some fun or some distraction for a period of time. But for someone that is going through a mental health condition or mental health issue, that's going to be like not even a band-aid. That's applying spit to a deep wound. That's not going to really help. So I think that's something we need to be very conscious of. Our programs need to be transformational. But I do want to say that while we may incur many different expenses, now our program, for example, is based on culture, leadership, prevention, and support. That's our Unilever mental health framework. And we've done different initiatives across all of those. Some of them are preventive, things like energy management tool, which helps us sort of do a predictive bit. And then there are other tools which are solutions, so which are places people can go. Bereavement guide, getting the help and support when they're dealing with specific issues. For women, we're coming out now. We've done this in some markets, but in others, we'll come out with a life stage and hormonal life stage sort of program. That's just it, right? Understanding that mental health is something that needs nurturing, that needs support, that needs lots more. I think that's the other thing. So where it becomes sort of something that we're only running when the process or the policy says this is how we should do it, but the way we leave someone feeling is very different. I think that's where the breakdown happens. The conversations that are happening about the individual, breaking confidentiality, all of these become huge inhibitions and sort of hindrances and prevent other people from speaking up. So I think the thing we need to be conscious of when we have initiatives, when we have campaigns, when we run programs, when we launch tools and solutions, we've got to think about the longer term impact on the individual. What are we making them feel? Are they getting the long term support they need? Are they going to have the sustained support from their line manager? Are they going to, like Sweta mentioned, she was a fantastic line manager from what I hear, and nurtured this individual to where they were thriving. And then they felt inspired enough to help others. That's a success story that needs to be told again and again and again. And equally, we need to admit the failures. We need to accept where we fail people. It's really hard when we fail people, when we speak about them, when we don't follow through and give them the support that they need. We don't give them the space because ultimately work has to get done. I think that's where the failure happens. The thing I want to also talk about is ultimately, when we invest in initiatives, campaigns, and all of that, what we've got to realize is also what is the wider benefit. There may not be a lot of people participating actively. Not everyone will call you EAP, not everyone will call a mental health champion, but the power as employers, the EVP that we get, that whole unique advantage we have when we become mental health friendly companies is that automatically when people feel that they can speak up, that they have these opportunities, it builds their confidence in the company. It helps them in that moment of crunch or crisis, and I think that's where the difference comes. So yes, there are many initiatives which if you launch with just one topic, one of the things we found is don't talk about topics like depression when you want to talk about mental health. Instead, talk about topics which are everyday issues. Talk about managing your finances, parenting, how do you caregiving for elders. There are many topics which you can bring up as an effective way to land a message around better managing your mental health. So I think that's where we need to be conscious when we don't have enough programs or enough depth to our initiatives, and we don't actually focus on the implementation. We just focus on in announcing them. They're not going to get used. So I think that's where the break happens.
Thank you, Sunita. And Shweta, would you have encountered a challenge or mindset barrier in the existing programs that your organization has? Like as a leader, how often do you also find yourself in conversation about mental health at the workplace?
So, fantastic points, first of all, by my co-panelist. I would say, Aarti, I have seen that a lot has changed in the last 2 years, the years of the pandemic. And I say this because I just feel that a lot of peers who I interact with, previously when we were talking about mental health, the kind of awareness or the kind of connect or passion with the topic wasn't as much as it is now. I think over these last two years, everyone has recognized the prevalence of mental health as something that exists, something that even if you don't talk about it is there. And I always say that there is no lack of mental health situation. There is only a lack of awareness. There's only a lack of, people coming out with their stories. So it is now very well understood and recognized. And in most cases, also through personal experiences, I'm sure in the last 2 years, most of us have had those weeks wherein we've not felt at our best, wherein we felt that, perhaps something is holding us back. And each manager or leader would have experienced that in some way or the other. So that bit of connect that I see with the topic, with the awareness around the topic, and with the need and the resolution to solve for it is much greater. Also, I feel that so in terms of answering your question, I don't feel now that a lot of initiatives that we are running are tick box anymore, because the leadership is now behind it more so, because they find a shared purpose. They find that this is something that they really need to solve for, and they recognize this as a business imperative more than ever before. So I just feel that we need to continue on this journey, because sometimes when you step away and when the years pass, or we move forward a few months and life seems more normal, perhaps you might again put this on a back burner. Perhaps you might forget about, all the challenges that everyone has faced. And perhaps you might also forget about how this is a very key and critical business imperative. It not only impacts the individual's wellness, but impacts the overall productivity, which then impacts your revenue turnover and all of that. So it is important that we leverage this time and we are able to create the right kind of campaigns to reach out to more people, to sensitize more managers, to have the right kind of interventions. So that is my take on this. We really need to act with a sense of urgency. I think over all these years, we have lost a lot of time, but now we really need to pick up pace and make up for the lost time.
Yeah. Great point that you got on, Swayta, how mental health translates to productivity and, company revenues for corporations, especially large corporations like yours. I couldn't agree more with what Sunita and Melena also had to share. The starting point at which you talk about mental health is going to leave that impact and an image in each of the receiver's mind. So where do we start? Do we start with talking about depression, or do we start with the more lighter stuff? Right, to be able to get to them and to be able to help them receive it in a more openness or open mind space, and also, instead of being able to drive too many, focusing on quantity versus focusing on one or two quality based transformational driven programs that span over a period of time, that take people from, say, point A to point C or point B in whatever way, but you walk the journey with them as an organization. So the pathways are plenty, you see. Some of them are driven by passion, some of them by coincidence, the others by purpose, as Sunita says, and some of them by crisis, right? It's vital for us to equip ourselves at every given point with various programs, and that's what we try to do with Mind Forward, is to be able to see what uh, our clients, our members would need in the process, and to be able to facilitate a discussion and alliance, collaborative alliance around it. Yeah. So my next question to Melena, Sunita, to both of you all, since we're running a little short on time, perhaps, would be, uh, as you've noted through the conversation thus far, our panelists, all of you all have been doing phenomenal work with your organizations, very progressive work with mental health as well, right? And despite your successful journeys, you have still chosen to alliance and be a part of Mind Forward. So, can you just tell our viewers how we help each other in the process? Over to you, Melena.
Thanks, Arti. So I think one of the key success factors of this alliance would be companies at various stages of their mental health journey. Some have progressed, like Unilever, have progressed, quite advanced. Some companies are still starting their journey. Some have done some work and could do a lot more. I think it's important for companies to see this as a platform for sharing and not so much as a competitive advantage. This is a crisis, it's a global crisis. And particularly in a country like India, where we're grappling with so many different aspects of diversity, things like, and there is always intersectionality between diversity and mental health. And what I've seen working in this space over the couple of years is that people from diverse backgrounds, mental health impacts people from diverse backgrounds differently. A classic example would be what are the mental health issues that women experience versus the mental health issues that men experience. So for me, the biggest takeaway for this alliance is creating that platform of sharing. And also, it's a question of responsibility and accountability. As profit making firms, how can we come together to make a difference collectively, both in the workplace and in our wider communities? And there is a business benefit to this as well. It's part of the ESG agenda in most organizations. Many of our clients are asking us, what are we doing to support the mental well-being of our employees? So for me, this alliance is a great step forward to share, to learn from each other, and to really collaborate to bring about the change that is much needed. Sunita, over to you.
Sure. And I think just to add to what Melena is saying, the fact is that this alliance, mind forward alliance, or any other mental health collaboration, ultimately, what does it do? It brings workplaces together. It brings employers together to both share the learnings, but also share the hardships that we have. Right? I think there is always going to be challenges because this topic is such a relevant issue, and because the statistics are so galloping. The fact is that in time, we're all going to need to offer simple, anytime, anywhere mental health solutions to our people because we are responsible. That's where people spend a third of their lives at the least, if not more. So there is that responsibility. We have to help them have healthy and productive and part of the community lives. And therefore, for me, the thing that we really need to sort of be aware of is that when we come to an alliance like Mind Forward Alliance, like Marina said, it's collaborative. We have had a journey for a number of years, but there have been pitfalls, there have been problems. When we share with each other, what we end up doing is we just help other companies to not have those same challenges. It just helps us get to where we need to faster. And what we ultimately want to do is make the world a better place for mental health for everyone. So we are more than happy. We are committed as Unilever to actually share our mental health champions program. So much of the learning we've had, and there's so much we continue to learn from other businesses. We never think that we've arrived and that's it. We've got everything sorted. There's always going to be something to learn. So alliances like this help you to see best practices. It helps you to learn from one another, adopt programs without having to go through the steep learning curve that I think some of us have had. So I'm just going to say that cut all of that angst. When you collaborate together, what you end up having is a really easygoing conversation on what the challenges are. And so many of us just pick the phone to each other when there is a complex issue. Melina will just call me, we'll discuss it, we'll find the solution, we get on with it. You don't get that. You don't get that advisor or that consultant internally within your own business with this expertise. There are very few people who are experts in this space. So being able to pick up the phone to one another and have a conversation is a fantastic advantage. So there's that as well. We've all got to know each other. We've come together on different occasions. We've faced different challenges together. I think that's the advantage you get from an alliance. So for us, being a part of this is to make a difference, to make mental health accessible to everyone, whether it's at our workplace or every workplace. I think that's what we get through this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel the success of an alliance lies in businesses working together as a collaborative towards transformation. Like it's about sharing those learnings, those pitfalls, those wins, those misses, right? That will only steer businesses and accelerate the pace of change and transformation, right? So we are meeting our goals and meeting the priorities and need of the hour faster than the trial and error method, right? The aim of Mind Forward and the Alliance is to influence good practices through collaboration, right? I trust Swayta will agree with us on this. I will uh, bring the panel discussion together with this last and final question. Is there any parting thoughts and comments that you as individuals who have worked uh, with adverse groups and needs would like to share with any of our viewers or perhaps leaders who look to walk the journey with us at Mind Forward? Melina? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's important for the leadership, the senior most leadership team in any organization to set the tone for this, like most other change initiatives, but particularly on mental health. And I've really seen with the storytelling the power of vulnerability. So when you have a senior leader talking about their journey of well-being or living with a mental health condition, or basically how they manage their own mental health, it really makes a difference. It tells the other employees in the organization, I'm not alone. Somebody so senior is going through this and has dealt with this. Possibly I can do it too. My journey may be slightly different, but there are people who been have experienced this and have come out of this successfully. So leadership setting the tone is really important. And the second thing that I would suggest is start with awareness. And I think joining an organization like Mind Forward would be a great starting point, because Mind Forward is a global organization chaired by experts, led by experts, and will offer you a set of curated programs for that awareness. So I would encourage all the corporates listening to this session to consider joining Mind Forward Alliance India, as we need to tackle this beast together. We can't do it alone. That's what I wanted to share, Aarti. Thank you.
Thank you, Mellener. Let's go on to Swayta. Swayta, any parting comments? Any
Yeah,
thoughts that you'd like to
like I have
mention?
been saying since the start of this session, we all together jointly need to change the social fabric around the conversations and bring more and more people to talk about the mental health situation. Um, so even in the story that I did share with all of you, the individual did come up to me perhaps because I had a mentor who was very much known as a supporter of mental well-being, because he'd done some global podcast and videos, and he was also the chair of City Mental Health Alliance for UK. So I think not only City Mental Health Alliance sort of brings us together to solve problems, brainstorm, and I think City Mental Health Alliance also provide that very well evidenced practical guides to measure, to evolve, to develop our strategy around this whole mental health piece. But it also validates that the organization is joined up and is doing and is progressed on this agenda. So it just helps progress the whole thing perhaps together. And my urge is also to everyone listening to this recording to kind of join us and help us progress the agenda in India, because the more and more partners we have, that would quicken the pace of change that we see in the society out here.
Thank you, Sweta, for that kind message. Sunita?
So I would like to just, very quickly add one thing. Don't overthink it. I think the thing is we hesitate so much. We want to get it right. We want to have the perfect plan, the right framework, get everything done. Supporting people is a primary responsibility, and giving them a safe and nurturing workplace, a psychologically safe and mentally sort of mental health positive environment is a responsibility we have. So we don't need to overthink it. Simple thing you want to do as an individual, just educate yourself on the signs and symptoms. There's n number of courses, whether it's on LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, whatever program you're running in your company. Start learning about what the signs and symptoms are. Do a lot of crowdsourcing, just hear from your people what they need. Obviously offer that with anonymity, because everyone still needs confidentiality to maintain, so never break confidentiality. And lastly, don't overthink it. Get started wherever you are, whatever sized company you are. Find the space that you want to be in, but then stay on the journey, because having repeated communication and keeping on doing the same thing is what works best in the mental health space. And of course, you've got this rich pool of people to reach out to, through the mental health, Mind Forward Mental Health Alliance. And that would be a great place to cut down the steep learning that you have. So get started is what I would urge everyone to do.
Thank you, Sunita, for that. I'd say that the greatest advantage of building this alliance is the global network that our clients experience, where we work together, we come together, we collaborate, we share knowledge and experience, right? You've heard our panelists. If you're a leader in your organization, we at Mind Forward believe that you are a key asset to building a conducive work culture that promotes safe mental health. If our work and initiatives interest you, do reach out, and we look forward to helping you build a thriving mental health culture at your organization. And I take this opportunity to thank our panelists yet again. Without you, much that we have discussed today for our audience would not have been possible. So much gratitude for that. I take this opportunity to thank our global CEO, Poppy Jaman, for the vision and efforts in laying a pathway for better mental health practices for the Indian chapter. Much gratitude to Alison Unstead, CEO, Mind Forward Alliance UK, and Veda Prasad, Country Executive for Northern Trust, and also Chairperson for Mind Forward Alliance India. They have given us immense support to be able to drive initiatives. We are starting off, and we need all your support in the process. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Until next time, namaskar.